And the other thing I have to remind you is to please put yourself on mute. So I'm done with all of that kind of stuff. Welcome, everybody. I'm Marilyn London, membership chairman and board member of the Friends of the Stirling Road Library. I am looking at those of us who are attending, and I'd say about 90, maybe 100% of us are friends. So you know me, I owe you, and that's it. Thank you for joining us tonight. If anybody is a guest for any reason, welcome. And check us out at www.stirlingfriends.org. Join us and become a friend. We're quickly approaching 500, and maybe you'll be the 500th. So whatever, this is very crazy, but we must be doing something right. In any case, Shelly, thank you for being with us tonight. And it is because of all of our great friends that you are, so we're very appreciative. I hope everybody is getting their information on the newsletters and the calendars in the newsletters. They are updated, such as budget canceling last night. If you've got your current calendar, you will have seen it. So keep a watch at it. You get it every weekend. If you don't get it on a Friday or a Sunday, let us know, because we'll correct it. And if you want to stay current, you have to see it. So all I can say is Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, those of us celebrating Hanukkah for the few days that are left, and let us just keep celebrating and let this dance continue. So with this dance continuing, Shelly, you can take it and waltz away and tell us all what's going on.
Thank you, Marilyn. I have to tell you, we're going to have a smaller audience tonight because the only place you can see this film was on Canopy. So it's mostly, I imagine, going to be friends tonight. And you're lucky because you were able to get this film. I hope you feel that way. And the other piece of news that I meant to tell you beforehand, and I meant to put it out there, and I just forgot all about it and thought about it today, was that I don't know how many of you watched the end credits. And if you didn't, you'll have to go back in and watch, but I will explain it to you as I finish my talk, because the end credits reveal what actually happened, the true story behind this. Susan Metz, you saw it? The Russian reporter? Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. I hope you are having a happy Hanukkah if you're celebrating. Anyway, Chinese takeaway. It's from Argentina, 2011. The director's name is Sebastian Borenstein. He's written and directed mostly comedies and TV series, some of which star Ricardo Darín, who stars in this film. He is, I'll get back to him after the discussion, but he is probably Argentina's most prominent movie star. He is to Argentina what Jack Nicholson is to America. I mean, he does comedy, he does mystery, he does every kind of genre, and he's just marvelous at it. And he's walked away with tons of awards for his performances. And if you'd seen him in other films, which you have, believe it or not, if you remember The Secret in Their Eyes, yes, he starred in that one, Marilyn, or Argentina 1985, which was an Academy Award nominee last year. And he changes with every role. He's that good. Anyway, this particular film won 12 major awards and international awards, including Best Film, Best Actor, and Best Actress at the Argentine Academy Awards. And it won Spain's Academy Award for Best Ibero-American Film. It is a genuinely, at times, hilarious and heartwarming fable of the era in which we live. Chinese Takeaway is a story of coincidences and fate and how changes in our lives are brought about more by circumstance as opposed to choice. The film demonstrates how even the most fanciful and coincidental premise gains credibility through a strong story, characters, and character development. I mean, he really manages, in my estimation, to hit it out of the park in terms of characterization and dealing with the situation itself. It is a universal, it is a universal story. I mean, you could see it set in any country. And it's a story, despite its tragic comic opening, which I'm sure you're watching and you're going, okay, where is this thing going to take us? It spends its time revealing what makes this crotchety older guy, Roberto, tick, and how he will eventually be transformed from being a grumpy old man who seems to live his life in isolation, blind to the needs and attention of others, and becoming transformed into realizing he's not alone. He's not alone in the world. Just the way the cow fell on Jun's fiancée at the beginning, Jun falls into Roberto's life. But before that happens, we meet Roberto. Oh, and the opening of the film is wonderful because, we go from China. You have this beautiful vista. We see what happens, and we're like sitting there going, okay. And all of a sudden, we're upside down. Do you notice? The store is upside down in Argentina, and then it slowly revolves to reveal where we are, because he's on the other side of the world. He's literally on the other side of the world. He's on the bottom of the world. So the world turns, the globe turns. I love that. Metaphorically, it was a beautiful little statement. But before that, we see Roberto expressing his anger over literally being screwed over by never getting the correct count of screws. He's yelling at the supplier. He says they're constantly cheating me. So we see he's really, then we get, and along the way, we get that idiot customer that comes in and asks stupid questions to the point where he finally drives him away altogether. But we see that he refuses when a supplier comes in and wants to make up for the screws. He says, I have a present for you of English screw bits. He says, keep them. We have no idea why he rejects the English screw bits. See, this is what I mean by revelation. If you're really watching, these things come back to us later on. His glass cabinet shrine, when he gets the little glass figurine and he goes in, he puts it down, it's happy birthday, Mom. He visits the cemetery. All of these little things which are, haven't been explained and will be. And especially the peculiar hobby he has of reading international newspapers for bizarre stories of coincidence and fate, leading us to this whole story that we see played out in daydream sequences, absurd sequences in which he escapes by fantasizing about the pain of others, literally. But he's in them. You notice that he's one of the characters. He's the character in the car in the first one. He's the barber in the second one. And what we see, and Roberto doesn't realize, is that his own life is writing such a story. His own life is writing a story, with him being one of the many people around this whole crazy planet coping with changes brought about by circumstance, not by choice. The fact that the two do not speak the same language only adds to this very funny tale of culture clash. But even with his first efforts to get Jun on his way out of his life and how he first meets him, we always say in romantic comedy, and this is basically can be a buddy picture, a misanthropic romantic film in many ways. But we see, and how he falls into his life and how he tries to get him out only gets them deeper into their relationship, especially with the incident at the police station. When he finally takes him to the police station, and the cop is nasty, and he asks him to apologize, and then he knocks him out, which again comes back to us later, interestingly enough. And their living arrangement only adds to the hilarity of the film. Having lived as a hermit for so long, now Roberto has to share his space and his habits with someone who is completely alien to his tics, let alone to his language. Of course, there's Marie, and we also have Marie, who, despite revealing her feelings for him, cannot get him to come to terms with his own feelings. And her scenes with Jun, when sharing her photographs at dinner, also serve to demonstrate that sometimes language isn't always necessary to communicate feeling. We see, as he sees the picture of the cow, we see how sad he gets, her cow. But she's very gregarious and friendly and wants to share with him. While his efforts are constantly foiled, Roberto's, at helping Jun out or getting rid of him, as especially at the Chinese embassy, and his begging the wrong family. I love it when the wrong family shows up and he's begging them to take Jun. Well, can't you just take him for a while? And they drive off. And especially when Jun accidentally breaks the glass collection. It is, he takes him, throws him in a cab and says, just take him to Chinatown, get him out of my life. But we see Marie comes by at that moment, soon after, and she gets him to relent. She tells him how lucky Jun was to find a man like him, although we're suspect of that comment, even though they can't communicate. And then she goes on to tell him, that's why I love you. And she goes on with this romantic, you make my legs weak, you make, and telling him how good he is, even though he has a hard time with his feelings, and he really can't even answer her. He says, you're a kind person to her, and he opens the door and lets her leave. But that scene, that little speech, was so sweet on her part. It reminded me, when I spoke, that Doreen reminds me of Nicholson in many ways, but it reminded me of a film Jack Nicholson was in, for which he won an Academy Award. And if you remember the speech that probably clinched it for him with Helen Hunt, in As Good as It Gets, if you've ever seen that film, and if you haven't, it's terrific. But in that, he tells Helen Hunt, you make me want to be a better man. You make me want to be, and that's what Marie is doing for him, telling him, you are a better man. You're better than you think you are. And finally bringing Jun back after Jun saves him from the cop. I love that. He decides, because after Marie tells him what a great guy he is, he decides, I better go and get him. He goes out and he looks for him, and there's Jun, and Jun sees the cop taking him away with the gun and saves him. And I love it because now it seems that finally Roberto has learned to depend on, at this moment, he's going to learn to depend on others as he comes up with the idea of ordering the Chinese food and getting the delivery person to make it his last order. If you notice, as he's answering the door, the guy says to him, I'm your last order, as you asked, I'm the last order. And he brings him in to translate. It's a wonderful scene. And the three of them can sit down, and the conversation between Jun and Roberto can be translated, and it really pulls everything in this film together. What a conversation. At first telling Jun he has to learn Spanish. I love it. He says, well, what can he do? Well, tell him he can learn Spanish and I'll pay for the lessons. And then he has to get a job so that they can communicate. And then in reply to Jun's question, he opens up about what he looks for in the papers. He says, what are you looking for in all those papers you read? How absurd life is, concerning his father's discovery. And we learn his story. We learn why he doesn't want the English bits. We learn why he puts that little glass thing for his mother in the cabinet. We learn all of these things just in that conversation, and how his father's death and Roberto's return too late all lead up to the clock, to him going to sleep when the clock reaches 2,300 hours. We're constantly, this guy is like, he's beyond an A-type personality. He's so, everything has to be the way it is. And then the phone call from Jun's uncle right after that scene. And finally, when Roberto returns from the airport, he sends Jun on his way. He discovers the drawings that Jun made in his room. And he sees, he really was talented. And finally, when he's clearing up the papers, he looks out the window and he sees what will propel him to his fate. The cow staring him in the face. And in this case, the film is the cow that divides becomes the cow that unites. It's so interesting. It's the Chekhov cow. If you show me a cow in the first act, it better go off in the third. And at first, it's, as I said, a token of disaster. And now it's a token of love, staring him straight in the face, just the way Marie stared him straight in the face. What's the matter with you? You want to shake him. And now he realizes, and he drives off, and we have that wonderful moment at the end when she sees him coming. Exploring the ideas around culture clash. Chinese Takeaway tells this intimately human story without losing sight of its larger themes. Roberto's own identity as the son of an Italian immigrant becomes significant in the context of Argentina as a country of immigrants united by a few shared experiences, like the war with Britain, which explains why, as I said, he refused the English drill bits. Also the fact that, it's a country of immigrants, Argentina. Not only did Italians go there, Jews went there. It became another melting pot of its own. Yet behind all this is the sadness that often spurs travel and shapes who we become. Roberto struggled to help young Jun find his uncle mirrors Roberto's own struggle to accept the loss of his parents. He didn't really know his mother, which he's trying to connect with in some way, and the father he lost. And Jun brings that into his life. It gives him the meaning. As absurd as these papers were, and he says it's all crazy, and he says, here, look at this one, it's from your country. And Jun realizes that's my story. It shows you how small this planet really is. And that, there are coincidences like this. They do exist. How often you can travel to another country, meet someone, and get into a conversation, and all of a sudden you either know somebody in your place or their place, whatever it is, but there is a coincidence of familiarity. The cinematography and the set design, so nicely detailed, work beautifully together in the film. I love the opening, taking us from China to that upside down view of Roberto's store, the close-ups that bring us closer to the characters, that really take us inside the characters. We're constantly going through doors, through windows. There's a lot of framing in the film, but there's also a lot of close-ups of their faces with their expressions of frustration, bewilderment, and of course, ultimately love. Ricardo Darín is superb as Roberto, sympathetic, even at his most misanthropic. Roberto's meanness is often delightful to watch. His dry humor undercuts the most poignant of scenes. Ignacio Wang, who plays Jun, who is from Argentina, by the way. He's not from China, he's from Argentina. He does a fantastic job of communicating without words. He sometimes speaks in agitated Cantonese, but it's not subtitled. We have no idea what he's saying. It's, he's putting us, the director puts us in the same place as Roberto. We have no idea what he's talking about. And he gives his character a complex emotional life, which we can bear witness to because of the beginning, even while Roberto struggles to connect with it. Sebastian Borenstein has created and assured a very assured and intelligent film, from my estimation, making us laugh out loud and even shed a little bit of a tear during the course of the film. I mean, how he came up with the story, and as I said, if you watch the end credits, well, if you go back and watch the end credits, but you'll see it after the titles come on, a little screen pops open with a Russian reporter, and it was a Russian news story. And he talks about the fact that now here's another story, and he goes, it seems that Russian pilots, and this is true, Russian pilots had abducted a group of cows from Japan, put them on the plane, and they got violent. And when they got violent, they did open up the cargo bay and they threw them out. And one of them landed on a Japanese fishing boat, and it sunk the boat. It sunk the boat. That's what ultimately happened. And you know, we hear the Russian guy go on and we don't see subtitles. And then finally we see the last subtitle is he's saying, "This is the most absurd story I have ever reported." And so it brings truth to what we've just seen, which I thought was also hilarious. So I hope you enjoyed the film. And now I'd like to open up for the discussion. So who wants to go first? Who's going to jump in there? I know some people I can call on that will have comments. The little thing is going to go around. So Rachel, I see you smiling. So why don't you jump right in there?
Hello. So I loved this movie. I loved that it was a comedy. And it was so funny when the screen went upside down. I was like, okay, I'm going to my best friend Linda. I go, what the hell happened here? You know, and I didn't know what happened. And then all of a sudden it writes itself up and I go, oh, it's the movie. I loved it. And initially also with the subtitles, I'm going, wait a second, maybe we need to put subtitles in. And thank God Linda had already looked up the movie saying when he's speaking Chinese, it's no subtitles. So I loved it. I thought it was so clever. And I just love the interaction. And then when he starts making breakfast for him in the morning, because now he knows his tradition, and he looks at him, and there's no like saying, oh, thank you. There's no nothing. It's just like, okay. And then the one time when he's like pissed off, he goes, oh, I have to make breakfast today, you know, after all this time. So I loved the movie. Very good choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, I mean there are so many moments that are funny. You know, the theme for this month was laughter in the dark, and it's meant as a multi-themed idea because there is dark comedy in this, but it is, yes, when he gives him the first, it shows you, reaching out and showing you culture clash when he gives him the food. And he's telling him, the one is this and the other one is testicles. He says, that's the problem with this country. Nobody has testicles. I mean, it's just, you're laughing at this guy. I mean, he's the angry old guy. If it were made into an American film, which I can easily see, but I'd be afraid they'd ruin it naturally. But I could see somebody like Walter Matthau playing this part, or even a Jack Lemmon. I mean, they had the sensibility to play this kind of role. The angry old guy was terrific. Thank you, Rachel. Linda?
I love that movie.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Linda Pava. Go ahead.
Oh, which Linda is it?
You can go first. Go ahead.
There are too many Lindas. There's three of us.
Well, three of us.
Yeah. Oh,
I
that's
love
right.
that movie. I'm not a giggler, but I mean, certain parts really got to me when he brings him to Chinatown and he's like, speak to him. And he's speaking a mile. And then the man goes like this. I don't know what he's saying. And he said, but you're like Chinese. And he says Mandarin and Cantonese, I felt that the movie was very funny, but there was a serious theme through it.
Yes.
And a lot of really funny parts. I loved it.
Terrific. Yeah, there is, there's a sad thread that runs through the film. But you're right, and that demonstrates, I mean, everything has sort of meaning in it. I love it when he is with the Chinese owner of the shop says to him, get him out of here. He says we don't speak the same language, and they're both Chinese. I mean, it just shows you the differences within a culture itself. And then when he goes into the embassy, I love it when the guys are just sitting there and he said, I'd like to see, and they say he's on vacation. He said, wait a minute, this is a country of over a billion people and you don't have people to fill in? I mean, it's just
The other thing that I really loved is when the family came and they bring the older person,
the blind
in the car,
uncle, yeah.
and he's blind and he feels him and he says, that's not him. Yeah. Very
Terrific. Terrific. Linda Hawk.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that this is very similar in my mind, but not with all the humor and the language problems and all that. But the Man Called Ove, and then the one they just redid it in America with The Man Called Otto. So you could see Tom Hanks to take the role if he did it in America. But anyway, but it had all the same things with the person that's such a grumpy person and they have to have everything just right, and then they get so impatient with people that don't do everything just right. There's a lot of character traits, from Bachman's novel, not that he took it from that or anything, but the character is very similar for that. And so I noticed that right away, but I enjoyed all the iterations of that story also. If for any of you that haven't seen it, then the more recent one, A Man Called Otto, or you go to the original one, which was done with foreign films, or just read the book. That's also quite good. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. But I wish they would tell us sometime when the subtitles are not going to start right away, because all that beginning part, which was I needed to go back and watch it, but I ran out of time. My life's been very hectic lately. And so I'm struggling. Oh, my subtitles are off. So I'm trying to watch and I'm fiddling. I'm going back and forth and everything until he finally starts counting nails. And then you see, or screws, whatever it was. And then you see the subtitles for the count. And I realized that I had just, stressed myself out and missed, being able to watch the scene concentrating because I thought I didn't have subtitles on. So
well, from now on, let that be a lesson, because there are films that do start that way, and it's on purpose because they don't want us to understand what they're saying.
Right.
They're putting us in another place, and you have to, just have patience and wait, and the subtitles.
Well, I don't mind waiting, but then you figure, I always assume, my first assumption on things like that is I have messed up.
Yes.
So I just assumed that it's me. So I've got to fix it before I miss half the plot, so that's the thing. I don't have much confidence in my abilities when it comes to
don't ever assume, because at least in this case, you can always go back.
Yes,
so,
that's
just
true.
let it happen, and then if you all of a sudden they're all, just goes on like that, then you can say, okay, it's my fault.
And then I realized I should have gone back anyway and watched that beginning part, but I was pushed for time and I couldn't do it. But I may still do it before my canopy points run out for the month.
Well, actually, if you saw the film yesterday or the day before, you'll still be able to watch it without losing any points.
Right.
Yeah, good. Linda Brockman, did you have something? Oh, I thought that. Okay. Susan.
Come on now, all Linda speak. You have to speak.
No?
Well,
You have nothing to say?
Rachel spoke for both of us because
No, I did not.
well, because we were going through the same thing, Linda. We would have been, except that, like Rachel said, I had read something about it before, saying that you are not going to be able to, that the Chinese is not going to be translated. So
Right.
I felt like I was glad I knew that, because I would have been doing the same thing.
Well, now I want you to think of this. When you watch, you're watching these foreign films, and sometimes a character's speaking English, okay? Now, if it's an Italian film and you're Italian and you're watching it, they're not translating the English. So if you don't speak English, you're in the same boat we are. Remember that. That's why directors do that. It's on purpose, because the other characters may not understand what they're saying. and wants to put us in the position of those characters. Okay, Marilyn.
Yeah, well, I thought at the beginning was interesting. The fact I thought it was intentional that there was no translation, because later on in the film, you see that these people were able to communicate with one another, despite the fact they had no language in common. And the only one who did the translation was the Chinese takeout young man.
Right.
He's the one who was very important, because he really did bring them together in terms of language, but you didn't need language to communicate. And the other thing, I may be wrong, but I got the feeling that Roberto lived vicariously. And to me, that's why he had the newspapers, because he wasn't doing these things, but he was living through these different exciting experiences. And also the question I had was about that love scene between himself and what's her name, Mara. Was that vicarious, or did that really happen? And to me, that was all part of his, living through. Oh, and also the airplane that was hanging in his car.
Yes.
And it was his again, he was always traveling. He was traveling again through the newspapers. So that's how I saw a lot of vicarious living, if I'm correct.
Well, it's not just vicarious. It was also a means. It was a means of not dealing with his grief. By doing that, it was an escape. He was escaping from his own grief by getting into the grief of others, because all those stories were stories of grief. The lovers going off in the car, the guy getting hit with the bus. They were all stories of people getting killed. It was funny, that the guy in the barbershop that he cuts the throat was his customer that he kept throwing out of the store. But he was, and he did have that experience with Marie, because she sent him the letter. He had never read it. He was so detached, he hadn't read it. When he read it, she said, since that night, she felt a connection, and he was remembering that night, which was hilarious the way that played out. But yes, it was, I love it though. And she says, the bedroom. He says, that's my father's room. And there was so many little funny moments when he first meets Jun. Jun has a little blood on him, and he gives him the tissue. And then later on, after he gets beaten up by the cop and is sitting in the car, he goes like this. He gives the same motion. It just, things played back and forth between the two of them. It was wonderful. They're wonderful together. I could see them making more movies. Okay, Marilyn, London.
I thought that it was very different, was interesting. I enjoyed it. It made me think about, in this global world that we live in, the importance of diaspora, because how Jude decided where to go when this tragically happened with his fiance. He went to a place where he knew somebody in Argentina.
Right.
And I think that is very common, that all of us, or anybody, if they are going to leave their security of their home, they're going to go where they know of somebody. And so this is where he chose. The thing that I thought sort of interesting, and it didn't fit the narrative, but when the Chinese people that the embassy sent, who were wrong, and yet I felt they had no empathy for their own, that they should have done something to try to help him. And yet they just, went back and did their world and left him on his own. And I didn't like that, because, that doesn't suit the way I think it should be. But it was interesting, and maybe he wouldn't have found his uncle if that had happened, and maybe whatever, it wasn't in the story. But I think that diaspora is very important.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely. I mean, this is a story of diaspora in many ways, because it's not only Jun's story, but there's the poignant comment that Roberto makes. My father ran away from one war, and he wound up with another one. You know, so it's the story of getting away. It's the story of wanting to find a better place, especially, you know, through an act of, you know, when you're in grief, and Jun was in grief, and he was grieving, and he came to South America to find the only relative he knew of. You know, and yes, the Chinese embassy was not very helpful at all. You know, but he really taunted them to the point of throwing them out, which was funny. But it's true. It's true. Okay, who else? Who else has a comment? Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Nobody? Wow. Wow. See? Well,
If I may, I'm sorry I'm being late, but we had a budget meeting and I'm part of the board and I had to be there. And there
That's
was a lot
okay,
of
Laura.
discussion and all that. So here I am. I have to comment that if the people who understand Spanish, it was so funny because the way he spoke, the language was so Argentinian, but the translation does not give it the real feeling of what it was. So I thought it was, and it was also like he was such a good man that he wanted, in the end, he helped the Chinese, even though, and you know, the way they interacted, they didn't understand each other, and I thought that was so funny, you know. And then when he sat down for breakfast, and he noticed that one ate the crust and he wanted the inside, so he did this thing, the thing for the Chinese wanted to do good things for him also, because he noticed that he was such a good man, that he was doing things for him. But it was a nice ending because finally he got together with his family. So
yes, and it's true. Look, this often happens that translations are not, and I'm glad you're here to tell us that, but translations are not always that accurate because they're limited to how many words they can put on the screen and the time limit that those words can be on the screen.
And also the way he talked, it was not, you know, maybe it wouldn't be nice for people to hear that he was cursing, you know.
They
the
were
way
translating some of that.
They curse a lot in the way they talk.
Yes.
It was, and it's so natural, and he's such a good actor. He's such a good actor. All the other movies that he has done. Ricardo Darín.
Yeah, we went over that before you came.
I'm sorry.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. But thank you. Thank you. Susan Madge. Where'd she go? There she is.
I'm here. No, I'm here. I even put my picture back on. So I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the movie, and I too in the beginning was a little, what did I do? Why isn't there anything happening? You know, I'm watching and saying, what isn't anything happening? But he started out being a good man. He could have left him on the street. He could have left him just where he was, but he picked him up, and that was the opening of his life a little bit. He never expected to have a guest for so long, but on the other hand, it was the opening of his life. So you knew this change was going to happen. Something was going to happen to interrupt his routine, so to speak. And I thought it was a real evolution of character, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
It was just really wonderful to watch. And I liked the culture too. And I enjoyed the cursing, Dora, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of the whole character.
It's human. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, his anger at the world was tremendous. But he also, you know, when he first brings him, he locks the door. He locks his bedroom door. You know, he doesn't trust them. And then later on, he thinks about it and he doesn't lock it. So you see his transition. You know, he was, and he needed this to open him up. You know, the fact that he was sitting at the airport, you know, they were doing that, he goes to the airport and he sits there to watch the planes coming in. He's got this whole travel thing going on in his head. And it was just, you know, everything is a coincidence.
but it's a
the film is
coincidence.
organic.
That's like, it's like a quilt in a way. It's like putting
Yeah.
all the pieces together, and this quilt is everything is connected. So it had a theme running
Yes.
through it, and I really enjoyed this movie, and I thought they were very good actors. But it really struck me finally that they used the takeaway. That's where it came from, I guess. The
Yes.
takeaway boy to come and help them to understand each other, and yet, and there was so much that was the same with them yet different. That's what I found, and I thought it was a wonderful movie and very well acted. So thank you. And
Yeah,
I did
oh,
laugh a lot, but it was really a very interesting character study.
Oh, my pleasure. And as I like to say, you called it a quilt, which is also appropriate, but I always see these films like Rube Goldberg machines. It's like, you don't know how it's going to all fit together, and each one thing leads into the next, and it does it beautifully. In this case, I thought, a terrific film, and it really earned its awards. Anybody else? Yeah, Marilyn?
One more thought that I had. I loved the movie, but I was thinking about the time that the figurines were, were destroyed, and that almost was one of the ways that allowed him to sort of release and to get rid of what he was locked into. Was very secure, because every year he did the same thing. But suddenly, the way he was counting everything was very, very meticulous. But now he loosened up. And the goodness in him really shone through, and the fact that he was able then just to get away and to go find his love.
It's interesting you said that, because he was doing this in the end, after Jun left. He was going back to doing that. He was buying the roses. He was going to the cemetery. He was doing the same routine, and he comes home, and all of a sudden he saw the picture on the wall, the writing on the wall, the painting on the wall, and that broke him out of it. That made him realize, you're not alone, buddy, and you're not going to make it in this world by yourself. And somebody loves you. And that's, and it was Jun that left him with that gift, gave him that gift. So I thought that was tremendous, in the way humans deal with each other. This was a very human film, about the human condition, so to speak, and very, very wonderfully done. So thank you, Marilyn. Susan, Madge?
I forgot I was muted. I'm being so good tonight. I mute myself. What I thought at the end, when he goes to find her and he goes to her house, and what is she doing? She's milking a cow.
The cow. Yeah.
I thought that was very, very weaving the whole thing together to one, putting a little bow on it and saying some tragedy happened, and look at the end. It's not such a tragedy,
Yeah.
So that I thought was very, very nice. I like happy endings.
Yes, I understand that, and it's the beginning. It's a happy beginning.
You're right. That's right. That's true.
The interesting thing is, and I learned this from another film, is that there's a psychological effect that happens with trauma. When a person goes through a trauma in a group situation, usually is called the diamond in the tragedy. Is that you all of a sudden find something that turns it around for you, that makes the tragedy now not as bad. It takes you out of it. It allows you to break the trauma. And for Jun, it was meeting Roberto. It was finding, someone who took care of him and got him to the place he had to get to. And for Roberto, it was Jun who took him out of his grief and out of his tragedy to find his way. So it was the little diamond in the tragedy that each of them found, which I thought was really interesting, really worked well in the film. Thank you, Susan. And Linda Brockman.
It's actually me.
Well, it
No,
says
because
Linda
I had
and
another
I go for the first
The
one.
hand is over my head, but it's right.
Okay,
goes
good,
this way.
Rachel.
But I loved, when you think about it, with the end of the movie, when he does the mural of a cow, out of all choices, this is what killed his fiance. And he's putting that on the wall, saying, I'm not going to blame the cow. This is in my head. I'm not going to blame the cow for what happened. It wasn't the cow's fault. It's just like the parents dying in Roberto's life it just happened. But you got to go on with the life. And I loved how, if you looked at the cow, the eyes were like pointing at him, like, get on with your life. It had a look on its face, like, look at me, get on with your life. And I thought it was very poignant that of all things that he could have put on the wall, June chose a cow.
Well,
So
it
that
was
was very poignant.
It was, and it takes us back to when also it was his connection to Marie, because Marie showed him the picture of the cow and said, "There's my cow," and he remembered that, and it was the cow that caused an accident, but this is the cow that can bring them together. The cow that divides is the cow that unites. It works both ways. It was interesting. It was interesting that he chose that symbol. It really worked well. Yes, it did. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Marilyn, go ahead.
I thought that was an act of generosity, because even though the cow was such a negative thing in his life, he knew it was positive for Roberto, and he was so thrilled that he had been taken into Roberto's life, and he wanted him to make a connection with this woman who loved him. So
and the way the cow was portrayed, I mean, it was like coming off the wall. It was in your face. Linda?
I was going to say, but it was hardly the cow's fault, though. So the cow, had no fault in that. So you shouldn't have a negative connotation anyway.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. You feel bad for the cow.
Yeah, the cow didn't come out of it very good either.
No. Okay, terrific. Well, okay, so we have one more left for this year. And it is another comedy, and it's a terrific film, Cyrano, My Love. It's a backstage comedy, or what I like to call a backstage comedy. It is a telling of how Edmond Rostand, the author of Cyrano de Bergerac, the play, in 1897. It's an apocryphal tale, but it's how he came about to write the play, and it's a hilarious version of how he wrote the play, and sometimes again how life imitates art and art imitates life. It's a delightful film. It's beautifully staged. The sets, the costumes, the acting, and the writing. And I'll tell you more about its director when we get together next in 2 weeks. But it was based on a play that ran for over a year in France, the comedy Cyrano, My Love. So it was originally entitled Edmond, as in Edmond Rostand. But it's a very funny play. And when you watch the film, this time I'm going to remind you, and I will put it in my message when I put it out, is stay for the end titles. Stay for the end titles. There's a nice little surprise in this one too. So I don't want you to miss it. So when you watch it, remember that. And I will look forward to seeing you in
What's
2
the date?
weeks. What?
the
2
date
weeks
for
from
that?
today. That's the date.
Okay.
What's
I
today?
can
The
look at
13th, 21st, 28th?
No, I'll be gone already.
28th? The 28th, yeah. Okay, on December 20, right before New Year's. So I'll be able to wish you a happy New Year then.
Wednesday, the 27th, everybody.
27th. Okay,
Yeah.
I had it wrong. Wednesday the 27th, right. So have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy your Hanukkah, and I will see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you,
It was a
Shelley.
good
care.
one.
Enjoy. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Night, everyone.